Wait for it. Wait for it. And we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. And we're going to go in alphabetical order. And we're going to start with you, Mr. Lynn Barry.
Oh, hi, that's me. I'm Lynn Barry. I like to call myself the writer of ethereal darkness because I write dark, menacing things that have a little spark of hope.
Okay, now is that spark of hope just a train coming down the tunnel to smush you? Or are we talking real hope?
It's both.
Okay. All right. And what about you,
Giving
Matthew?
me Pandora vibes.
Right?
He's not even upset by that comparison.
No.
All right, what about you, Matt? Matthew.
Hi, I'm Atlanta author Matthew W. Quinn. I'm here because I've read a lot of Dune and have a lot of opinions. Check out my Substack, The World According to Quinn.
And we'll have all of that linked in the show notes. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. William S. Frisbee Jr.
Hey, I'm William Frisbee. I write military science fiction, some fantasy, and I'm really into military science fiction. Had a website since the 90s on it, so I've been around.
I know your website. Is that the Atomic something?
It's milsf.com. Be
Okay.
very careful where you put the F. milsf.com. Don't get that backwards.
What happens if you get it backwards? It's a family-friendly answer.
You wind up on milf.com.
I'm dense. I haven't clearly had enough coffee today because it took me a second. And Stabby's the one with blonde hair too, and she got it before I did.
Wow. You know, they always say us blondes are dumb. We really aren't. We play dumb so you guys just keep talking around us and we get all the information.
It's all part of your grand conspiracy.
Oh yeah, the blondes will take over.
The next part of the introduction to your listeners, I tell you how we first met them, but they've all been on our panels before. So rather than waste time, we're gonna jump into the religion question. So we have changed the game a little bit since Lynn and Matthew were on the show. So Lynn, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Let's say Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's an easy answer, I know, but you know, it's kind of classic, and I appreciate big, monster, thunder lizard.
That's valid. What about you, Matthew? What is your favorite dinosaur?
I'm going to be creative. Y'all ever heard of baryonyx?
I have not.
It's one of the newer ones. It's like a dinosaur crocodile. It's a dinosaur, but it lives in the water, has a big old giant hook thumb claw that catches fish. And if you ever read the book Raptor Red, there's Utahraptors.
So in the Jurassic Park games, on the Xbox, you can actually breed a baryonyx.
Interesting. Now this says the first skeleton was discovered for the baryonyx in 1983. Okay, in England. Interesting. I will have to read up on that after the show ends. You gotta love me. Well, it's new. I mean, I guess in the grander scheme of things, 83 was a while ago, but we'll call that new. All right. And what is your favorite zoo animal, Lynn?
My classic answer is tiger, but I have so much stuff that's related to red pandas that people would get mad at me if I didn't say that.
Pandas are adorable. Trash monkeys. All right, Matt, what's your favorite zoo animal?
I'm not really sure if I have one.
No.
Sorry, I'm not that fun at the moment.
You save all the fun for your books?
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, and last but not least, coffee or tea, and how do you take it, Lynn?
Coffee. If I can have it, I recently discovered that Japanese drip coffee, while really strong, It doesn't require all of the cream and sugar that things do in America typically. So if I can have it that way, that's fantastic.
What is Japanese drip coffee? Educate us today.
So it's they prepare it in it's the size of a large coffee cup, but it looks like a coffee, the regular carafe that you would have coffee in to be brewed. They put a little bit of water in there, put that on a burner, set that to boil. While it's heating up, they have another contraption they hook on top of it, pour in a bunch of coffee grounds, a little bit of hot water, mix it around. When it's really boiling underneath, they pour in more hot water, mix it to where it's thoroughly liquid on the top, and then hit a valve and it slowly drips through. It's a very rich, deep flavor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I actually have to try this sometime. Okay.
Don't order a drip coffee from Starbucks, JR.
I can recommend a place, but to be fair, it's in Shinjuku.
That'd be one hell of a commute.
Yes, it would.
All right. And Matthew, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I really don't like either. I've drunk coffee like if I really needed the caffeine urgently, like if I need to drive somewhere and was real tired. In that case, I just gulp it.
Okay.
If you go to a coffee shop, I typically get pastries.
Okay. And you don't like tea either?
Not really.
So what is your drink of choice?
If I need caffeine, Diet Coke, because I can just pour it and chug it.
Okay. All right. So you mostly a water guy then?
Pretty much.
Okay. That's healthy at least. Your doctor approves. So I'll drink your coffee for you so that way we don't have to get you in trouble.
Yeah, more for you.
That's right. That's the way we do it. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, obviously, if you're reading the episode title, we're going to be talking about Dune today. So we'll start with the easy one. How did you guys all discover Dune? I would say, what is Dune? But I think everybody knows at this point. I mean, how do you exist on the planet Earth and not know Dune?
Well, I remember my great aunt and uncle, and they're visiting from Chicago, letting me read their copy of Dune. I was probably a real little kid. I remember finding the Gom Jabbar scene scary.
Okay. And the Dune novel, obviously, if you didn't know, came out in 1965. And it's been a bestseller basically since then. So, all right. What about you, Will? Bill, when did you find the Dune franchise? Was it the books, the movie?
Definitely the books. And I might still have it on my bookshelf from the 80s. But yeah, definitely the book. I didn't see the movie. I've only read book one, because when you read a book that you really like, it's kind of like, can the other books add on to that or only detract from it? But I've had book one on my bookshelf since the 80s.
Okay.
And then it's been a while.
What about you, Lane?
When I was in kindergarten, I learned about the movie, and it seemed intriguing just because I was kindergarten kid. It's like, oh, this is supposed to be some really weird, crazy sci-fi movie. I didn't know anything about it. So 15 years later, I finally got to see it, and I said, this is a book too. I have to read it. And then I read it, and my mind was thoroughly blown.
Okay. I know at least Stabby and I, because we talked in the pre-show planning this one, this was an episode that was requested by some of our listeners, so we're doing it. But Stabby and I are neophytes in the world of Dune. So it's definitely something I have to get the books. I mean, I've been working my way through some of the classics, so I've read a couple of Heinleins, but I definitely need to get through Dune, because love it or hate it, it definitely is the shoulders a lot of us have built our careers on top of.
Nick has the books, and I still haven't read them.
Yeah, I imagine if we got the audiobook, that would be like a week of listening too, because it's such a big book.
Yeah. Like with me, when my ADHD kicks in, like I can either finish an entire book that most people take a year to read, or I am going to put down whatever I'm reading and clean the whole house. That one usually wins.
I mean, you're hired. I'll find some stuff to clean, and I'll read the book.
As you can see, I am redoing The Office for a third time, because I found more things to why books have been pushed aside for the time being.
Okay, so what is it you guys think that makes Dune such an iconic franchise that has stood the test of time?
Personally, I think it's because it's all about human potential. And, some things is like you've got to have the force or you've got to have this genetic thing. Ultimately, with Dune, it's all the super crazy stuff all comes from how much are you willing to push yourself to reach your goals. That can be purely mental, or that can be physical, or it can be some part of both.
Okay. What about you, Matt? Why do you think it stood the test of time and become such an iconic franchise?
Well, Dune had political intrigue and backstabbing and all kinds of funny business long before Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
Wheels within wheels and plots within plots and so on and so forth.
Okay. Bill?
I think it's because it's set very far in the future, but yet it's close enough that we can understand and we can relate to a lot of things going on there. And in that, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think there's a lot of comparison with Lawrence of Arabia, and a lot of people really associate and understand that. And then Frank Herbert, he took it far, far into the future and changed a lot of different things. So people can look at the past and these things click inside the mind, but then the story's about the future. And there's a lot of potential there, and he really built on that. So I think it just takes the future all the way to the past, and that's I think what makes it timeless.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I told my students trying to explain Dune to them. It's like Lawrence of Arabia crossed with Muhammad.
Mhm.
The outsider unites the tribes and conquers the universe.
Yeah, but he took so much from Lawrence of Arabia. It's like it's just very interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, I think the line even that's famously said in all the movie versions and the miniseries version, "Long live the fighters," is almost a direct, especially when in the books version of the Fremen language, is a direct line that Frank Herbert read out of an article talking about Bedouin fighters.
And
Wow.
and there's other terms, jihad and Mahdi, and things like that just tie in.
Yeah.
And jihad, the word the new movies desperately try to avoid actually using.
Yeah.
I mean, when the book came out, that was not a very commonly heard word. So he used that rather than crusade, so people would kind of get caught up in it and then realize, oh, am I supposed to be cheering for this? And the answer is no.
I think even before Arrakis, the empire is pretty Persian, like the Padishah emperor and the golden lion throne.
I also think that was more Nazi, if you think about it. You had the Sardaukar, which were the SS, and it's just, I think he compared, you had the spice melange oil, and the Empire needed it. So, like, a lot of parallels there.
Oh, the Sardaukar, that reminds the whole human potential quote. Yeah, let's dump all the criminals in the galaxy onto a irradiated hell world, and then only the absolutely toughest people survive, so let's make them our army.
Yep.
Like the Brian Herbert books actually show criminals coming out of the hills and joining Sardaukar drills. Of course, I just invoked the Brian Herbert books, probably get stoned.
Well, that's actually has precedent though in the original, so you shouldn't get stoned for that. Maybe for mentioning the other books, but I won't stone you for it.
Okay. We'll try not to stone anybody today. That sounds painful. And so, do you think that the books stood the test of time? Do you think they age well?
Well, the first few did. I haven't read beyond halfway through God Emperor. I started getting kind of bored.
Yeah.
Okay.
God Emperor has one chapter in it that has not aged well at all. There's one chapter where Leto II just goes off on homophobia, and he's just like goes super homophobic, and it's like, okay, that chapter ages poorly.
Is that
But
the
the
one where he
rest
said
of it?
gay men made good soldiers or something?
Yeah, I think that is in that section. Yeah. It's also he's also validating in part the existence of the fish speakers, which people are like, what the hell's a fish speaker? Which that Frank Herbert has a lot of contradictions because people have contradictions, and if I'm saying one villain, in the Baron, and one chapter in the fourth book, they haven't necessarily aged as well compared to everything else. That's pretty substantial compared to a lot of works of fiction.
Okay.
I found the miniseries Emperor more entertaining than the Villeneuve Emperor. That's right, Baron. Because at least he's entertaining.
My God, yeah. Ian McNeice, always speaking in iambic pentameter, is fantastic.
I mean, the Villeneuve Baron is a just growling fat guy. McNeice is having fun with it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, both elements, it's basically they took the source material and said, all right, which element do we want to go on? And the writers of the miniseries say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if the Baron did this? And like you said, Ian McNeice, he is just eating it up. And it's like, wow, it's a joy to watch his Baron. Whereas Stellan Skarsgård's Baron is the scary manipulator. And the book Baron is kind of both.
Okay. Do you know where he and what the landscape that inspired him was? Was he basing it on the deserts of the Middle East, since you mentioned Lawrence of Arabia?
No, it's actually based on some deserts in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, let me Google, see if okay, so the Dune Wiki says it was based out of Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up a picture of it. So this is his inspiration. I'm going to show that right here because we got the technology. So this is what they're saying, according to the wiki that was compiled. It looks like it was approved by his son. Was the inspiration for the Dune planet. Oh, no, there we go. And then this is the original cover, which I actually think is strange when you see covers from the original books, because like that would not sell a book these days.
Yeah, it doesn't show what the book's actually about. I mean, so many book covers these days are weirdly non-representative. That one is representative but has no action in it. It's just a landscape painting.
Well, keep in mind that cover was put together by an automotive publisher, because it's the only publisher you could find.
Yeah, props for him for thinking outside the box.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's not a bad from a purely art point of view, but I don't know that it really sells the book. I wonder if they were able to make the covers as vibrant back then, because they all have a matted look to them from the era. This is a cover from the 60s. I'm not sure if that's a stylistic choice or they just didn't have the ability to get the prints to look that way.
That cover reminds me of a book I had as a kid called Look Out for Pirates. From that time period. I think that book is worth a ludicrous amount of money now. But it had that same coloration.
And I don't know if that's what it would look like then, or if that's because it's aged now. Of course, somebody's taking a picture of a book that's 60 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So that also plays a factor. It's hard to say, but the art is different if you watch like the way the pulp covers are versus kind of what we see today. It's definitely an interesting thing. So
it'd be interesting to see the other covers of the time, the other science fiction covers, and just compare them.
Yeah, it might
see
be
if it was
something
really different.
that might be a panel discussion someday, like art by the book covers of the era, and see if there are any trends. Find someone that's real artsy fartsy, and they and Nick can get nerdy with it. I have not the skill set, colorblind, and I miss most parts of art. So we've talked a little bit about the books. Have you guys watched the movie or any of this? Was it there's 2 movies now in a series?
I have seen the 80s Dune, both miniseries and both movies.
Oh, so there's 2 miniseries and 2 movies?
Yeah, Dune and the Sci-Fi Channel ones. Dune and Children of Dune, which combines Messiah and Children of Dune.
Yep.
Okay. That's 2 movies, but you said there were also 2 miniseries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look those up. Did you have a preference in the version?
I think I probably like the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries better than all of them. It looks kind of cheaply made, but it's really faithful to the books.
Okay. You have opinions on this one, Lynn?
So I like a lot of what the sci-fi miniseries does. It is probably your most in-depth, faithful adaptation. Some people's favorite scene out of the original Dune book is this big dinner party that introduces a lot of the concepts and just has a lot of characters, and it's just them discussing the world and getting along. The sci-fi miniseries is the only version that has that.
Is that the one?
Go ahead.
Is that the one where Irulan is pounding a beer?
Yes, they have that bit in there too, which I think was made up just for the miniseries.
Because I can swear she goes full frat guy and just chugs a whole stein.
Oh, yeah. Chugs that sucker down.
Okay. So, Bill, have you seen the movies? I know you haven't read all the books. You just were a fan of the first one.
I haven't seen the miniseries though, but I've seen both the old Dune with Picard in it, and then the newer one I just actually watched today, and that was actually pretty good. And I know there's a version 2 of that coming out, and is it? It's not on Amazon. Okay.
It's been out for a while now.
It's just in the theater. It's been out for a month, but
okay,
it's well worth getting blasted by a very large, very loud screen.
Cool, but there are people there.
Well, yeah, the soundtrack is so good. That's what makes being crushed by the audio system so much fun.
Yes.
I'm all good with everybody going and seeing this movie in theaters, but if you buy the popcorn bucket, I am totally going to judge you.
Is there a Dune popcorn bucket?
Yes. Yes,
well, eating the popcorn make your eyes turn blue.
No.
Oh, well, that's the cool thing about Dune is it's given us lots of jokes that you see Gordon Ramsay use about it's put so much spice in it that I like your shirt. Is it? I can't remember what he said. He makes jokes about referencing Dune and spice when he's insulting.
It's something really like it's something along the lines of you put so much spice in it I can bend time and space, or you put so much spice in this I can now see the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I found the Reddit. You use so much spice, people are eating it or folding space and seeing the future.
Yes.
So, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and look up that popcorn bucket?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you about it because we like to be safe for work.
Yeah.
What is this popcorn bucket that we're not going to show on screen?
Pull it up
Saturday Night Live did a sketch about it.
Pull it up on your
a sandworm themed popcorn bucket.
Yes it is.
It's being ordered. The teeth are silicone and it's being ordered with extra butter.
Yes it is.
Oh my.
Ooh.
Oh yes, that does not look
that
like
just painted a picture.
Yeah.
You should
as an accessory.
Is that better or worse than the Battlestar Galactica frack pack on KFC?
I think it's worse.
Oh, it's worse because it completely ties in with books 5 and 6.
I could not order that popcorn bucket with a straight face. I would never be able to. I went into the Regal Cinemas looking for the new Ghostbuster popcorn bucket. I didn't want to see any of the movies. I just wanted the bucket because it looks like a ghost trap.
It's a trap.
And he's like, "Well, we still have some Dune ones," and I'm like, "I'm good. I'm good." And he goes, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "I have a 14-year-old son at home. I am not putting that in my house." And he goes, "Yeah, don't do that." No. But if you go and you buy one, I'm totally judging. I'm absolutely judging.
So if you bought one at home, dear listener, send it to Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and email linked in the show notes below.
Oh, I will judge you with all of my
send it
my
to her
spine
son.
pens.
Yes. So
First, you'd have to find me. I don't keep P.O. boxes and nobody knows where I live. 2, I check the mail. It'll go straight in the trash. Don't waste your money.
So have you guys read any of the follow-on books that his son did? With I think it was Kevin J. Anderson that he co-writes with.
Anderson. Mm-hmm.
So what did you think of those?
You know, the first 3 they did was a trilogy of books that was basically the life and times of young Duke Leto. And some people in the book community are really convinced that if there's one good guy, if there is a good guy in the series, because it's populated mostly by bad guys, then it's Duke Leto. And it's like, hey, what are his adventures like why would people like him in the world? Because it's such a threatening thing that people like him so much. They're cool, fun, and little adventures. I've heard a lot of people praise, even though I haven't read it, I've heard a lot of people praise the trilogy of books that explains the Butlerian Jihad, where they got rid of all of the thinking machines.
Okay.
So I've heard very good things about that.
Have you read them, Matt?
I read the young Leto books. I read the Butlerian Jihad books. I think I might have read the one where I remember one where it's Fade Routha and Lady Fenrig's daughter tries to shank Paul. I remember that one. I think that was the last one I read.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
That was.
I need to read that one. That should be fun.
That had to be. I was living in, I think, Lovejoy at the time, so we're talking like 2009-ish. I know there've been some more recent ones that I haven't read.
No, my understanding is they also have some graphic novels that they did adaptations of the book. So I don't know if any of you guys have checked those out.
I haven't, but I'd like to.
Yeah, my son's into comics and graphic novels and all the picture stuff. So I've been trying to explore what's out there that might cross the paths of what I like in sci-fi and what he likes with the pictures. So I only call it that because it makes Nick's eye twitch when he watches these later.
Why didn't you tell me? I would have sent him the whole Apogee universe.
We've talked about that. Nick's already on that.
Nick doesn't ship anything. I do. You have to tell me.
Okay, well, we'll do that off air. So, so you guys haven't checked it out. Were there ever any like games, either RPGs, video games, anything like that came out?
There were computer games. I never played them, but I knew it was there. It was sort of like a Command and Conquer before Command and Conquer.
Yep.
Was there? Did you play it at all or no?
No, I'm aware of it. I never played it.
Len, did you?
Oh yeah. They had a few of them, and like Matt said, they were Command and Conquer before Command and Conquer. I mean, the original Dune games actually created the real-time strategy genre.
Okay.
Pretty much by accident. But yeah, they're fun little games, and it's nice to see. Hey, gather some spice over here. Chomp, ate by a worm. Well, okay, there went that. I've also played the most recent tabletop RPG. When it first came out, I had a small group that we did that. It's a very different system than most RPGs, but very, very fitting of the setting.
Is it its own engine, or is it built off something like GURPS or Savage Worlds or D&D?
It's built off of the 2d20 system that Modifius Games does. Yeah, so it's one of those, you're rolling at least 2d20s and you're aiming for low numbers rather than high. And it's all very much character based as far as your things go. I enjoy it.
So is the campaign trying to conquer the planet? Is it trying to, like, the political intrigue angle? Like, what is the...
Whatever you'd like.
So it's open world. It's not some of the ones where they streamline you?
No streamlining. They have some guidebooks say, hey, here's a campaign thing you can do. But I mean, if you want to, they actually point out different eras in the main source book. It's like, hey, this is the era of the Butlerian Jihad. This is the era of, young Duke Leto. This is the era of the books. Here's the era of the God Emperor. Here's the era after the God Emperor. So they give lots of options.
Do you have a favorite, since you're the only one that's played it?
Of the eras?
Of the eras, of the characters. I mean, however you want to break it up. What's your preference?
I mean, as far as playing an RPG goes, I think the best way to do it is actually, I think the best way to approach it is probably to do something that takes place before the original books. Probably not as far back as Butlerian Jihad, but I think, like, for lack of a better term, young Duke Leto era. I think that's probably the best way to play it, somewhere in that area. But I mean, if somebody really wanted to sit down and say, hey, I want to have war between the Bene Gesserit and the Honored Martyrs, I'm like, you have fun with that.
You could have the Fremen Jihad as a game.
Yep. A lot of people go for that one too.
Easy mode is a Fremen because they control the space travel. Hard mode is any of the great houses who won't obey Paul because they can't.
Yeah.
So Stabby was saying in the side chat that they had a video game in '92 on Sega Genesis. Wow, that's a way back machine. And I think Bill was telling us in the side chat that there's some of these games are on Steam now. So if you're interested, it's definitely worth checking out.
So there's one on Steam that's not released yet.
Yeah, that's new.
That I'm looking at.
I'd forgotten about that one.
I think I have a Steam account, but it's been so long I don't remember. I know it's there. I just don't remember the login. Okay, it looks like they're the games look interesting. At least if you like the mystique of the newer movies, it's got that vibe to the art. Mm-hmm. So I'll grab these links for the Steam games, throw them in the show notes for everybody. But it looks kind of cool. So do you guys tend to get on Steam to play it all, or is that probably games you're going to have to pass?
I haven't done a Steam game in a long time.
Yeah, I avoid anything that I think I might get addicted to because I can lose days to games, and then I'm like, well, that's days I didn't write. Mm-hmm. I get all tweaky on days that I don't write. So
yeah, that's one reason I nuked my own Twitter feed.
You were both talking at the same time. So what was that, Matt?
That's one reason I nuked my Twitter feed is the times suck and it made me mad all the time.
So I just curate my Twitter feed. I guess it's X now for the podcast. And I throw up all the silly memes, science articles as I find them. And it's just general shenanigans. And we just don't take ourselves too seriously. And we avoid all the politics. And life is good. It's why I don't have a personal one, though.
Mine's all spooky stuff, and all I get anymore because I just like so much. Like I like Shudder, and I follow Joe Bob Briggs, and I follow the original Universal monsters and stuff like that. That's all that comes across my feed anymore. It's just monsters and slashers.
So when you watch the monsters, do they put people in there who like pineapples on their pizza? Asking for a friend.
You are a monster, JR. You're a monster. That's why I've taken you under my wing like a good little pet, because you're a monster.
So she's one of those. So is there anything you think about the culture that you see in the different political groups and the great houses in the universe that is Dune that speaks to you? Is there any one part of it that you guys really enjoy and gravitate towards?
Well, I do like House Atreides,
Yeah.
but
Me too.
You think
Because
you're
they
meant
seem
to
like
that one.
decent enough people. Well, key phrase being seem.
I appreciate the mentats. You know, teaching somebody from birth how to have the pure on the spot instantaneous computing power of the highest processing computer we can imagine. We have to train them from birth to do that. And that's one element that a lot of the adaptations kind of leave out, is just how much the mentats can really just think and process about stuff. It's like, oh, okay, they flipped their eye weird. Why are they important? Yeah, it's because they've already figured everything out. They just did it with logic and numbers rather than human intuition.
Okay. So do you think the way they did with the computing, do you think that makes them a little more timeless or not? Because like I've read, for instance, recently the classic Starship Trooper recently-ish in the last 5 years. And for all some of his presumptions on nuclear and atomic physics based on what he wrote and when he wrote it, for the most part, his story ages relatively well. Do you think Dune's as a story about science fiction, like it ages, or do you think you just have to accept that it's a product of the 60s?
Well, it's definitely a product of the 60s, if only because of the drug culture. But also it's the elements of, hey, I'm going to get rid of everything thinking machines. I mean, you see a lot of memes now talking about, Butlerian jihad because we have so much influence of AI, this, that, and the other. But the real thinking machines that Frank Herbert's warning you about is not AI. It's this thing.
Yeah, I think as originally conceived, the Butlerian Jihad was sort of terrorism against things people relied on too much. The Brian Herbert books made like Terminator in space. Like imagine a bunch of English teachers blowing up the Chat GPT company because kids keep making.
You're absolutely right.
Because kids keep writing their essays on Chat GPT and not writing them themselves.
Okay, blow up the Google campus. No, just make sure you nuke it from orbit. Just guns is not going to do enough. You got to nuke it from orbit.
Dang, there goes my Google Bard created Taylor Swift song about dating a horror writer.
See, exactly.
I think that's one thing that does make it ageless, is that they had something in the past where it's like, if you just watch the first book or the first movie, you can think that, okay, they had the Butlerian Jihad happened before, that was all the computers, the AI. You don't need those details. Yeah. So you can believe that it's a real world. They already went through that stuff and now they're where they're at. So I think that makes it ageless in that they've encountered things like that, but they've evolved to where they're at right now.
Yeah.
By the way, in case y'all aren't seeing the video, Len was holding up his smartphone.
That's probably a good thing for you to say. Thank you. I didn't think about that.
Saying that is a Butlerian jihad against Twitter too.
Oh yeah.
Social media in general.
Well, not as much as you might think though, because there is one chapter in there in the original book where Duke Leto is talking to his propagandists and he is coaching them on how to spin the story of House Atreides takes over control of Arrakis to make it seem better for House Atreides.
Yeah, but you don't need Facebook for that.
Well, I'm just saying that the propaganda and spin is touched upon very briefly, but it's there.
Okay. So are there any underlying themes that you think Frank Herbert, aside from the anti-tech kind of, or the anti-tech dependence, I should say, Are there any other larger themes that stick out to you?
Yeah, there's a big one.
Yeah.
It's called Never Trust Charismatic Leaders.
Sorry,
What-
Jason Momoa.
So was Frank Herbert given that he started writing this, you said in the 50s, was he a World War II or Korea vet?
I know he
I
was a
have to look
war
that.
correspondent because a lot of his background is journalism. I think in Korea he might have done some war corresponding from the front. How he got to that level, I do not recall.
According to Wikipedia, he was a photographer in the Seabees during World War II, suffered a head injury and got discharged.
Well, there you go. That would explain his reticence to charismatic leaders if he saw World War II.
Yeah.
And either be it the emperor or the Führer, like they dealt, or Mussolini. I'm not sure what his title was.
He actually has a quote that you can look up the audio of where he's talking about that particular point, and he describes. I'm going to get very close, but not on the dot here. That he describes Richard Nixon as being the greatest president of the 20th century because he taught us to distrust government.
I think there's a lot of people I've seen online saying that bad people in powerful places are pathological, like psychopaths or narcissists. There's a quote from Frank Herbert that said, power doesn't corrupt, it attracts the corrupt.
Yes.
Interesting.
Which kind of goes against Paul Atreides in at least the first book. He seems like a good kid. And
Read book
that's what by book 2, he's like, I'm worse than Hitler. But I mean,
that's almost a direct quote.
But I mean, it's not like he really has a lot of good options here. You don't fight the Harkonnen, they kill you. You overthrow the Harkonnen, then you have to fight the Emperor. There is no Paul does not get killed option here, except killing everyone else.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, were there other, like, obviously a lot of Dune happens on the main planet. Does it happen? Are there stories set on other locations?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Not to
The
spoil
later
direct
books,
things.
I think.
Book 6 takes entirely in places other than Arrakis.
Is this a franchise where Earth is a lost, origin of humanity, or is there still around in this one?
It's sometimes called Old Earth, Old Terra, Earth Terra. Yeah, it's referred to. It is a distant part of humanity's past.
In the Brian Herbert books, they nuke the hell out of Earth to defeat the Omnius, the super AI. And I think later on you see them delivering aid packages to the few survivors.
Okay.
So Earth that's even still around is not important.
That makes sense. A lot of franchises do that. Either they've traveled far and wide and then somehow forgotten where Earth was, or they destroyed it and now it's not an option. It's a convenient little plot device to get it out of the way.
Except Captain Kirk, who goes to save the whales.
So
a few hundred years from now.
So one of the jokes about Warhammer, for instance, is it's such a ridiculously OP franchise that if you compare it to anything, it wins because it was originally written to be ridiculous. On a scale of realistic to ridiculous, where would you say Dune fits?
You start with book 1 and you're a few degrees off from realistic. You get to book 6 and you're firmly in the realm of ridiculous because a lot of the ridiculousness of Warhammer is lifted straight out of Dune.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Well, I mean, the whole notion of a quote unquote God Emperor who sees all, knows all, is the forefront of the only codified religion. That's half the setting of the 4th book, but it's the setting of Warhammer 40K.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you recommend, like, obviously Bill has read the first book and he was afraid to keep going because he liked the first book so much. Do you recommend the first 6, or do you think they read one and stop?
So I have a few categories for people who read Dune.
Okay.
There's people who read Dune, just one and no further. There's people who read Dune Messiah, and then they say, wait, Paul Atreides is a bad guy? And then they stop. And then there's the people who read up to God Emperor, meaning they read the first 3 books. There's the people who read God Emperor, and then there's the people who read past God Emperor, because God Emperor is so crazy that's the make or break point of the whole series.
Okay. And then are the follow-on books by his son required for the plot, or are they just extra? Because there's a lot of mixed opinions in the Dune community about Herbert. Herbert Jr. I'm not sure what his son's name is.
Brian Herbert.
There's a lot of mixed opinion on his books about whether they're like spin-offs, whether they're part of the canon, whether they're, I guess, legends and lore as they did to Disney, Star Wars. Like, what do you think on those, since you've read so much of it?
I personally, I've reread all 6 Frank Herbert books at least once, and I was reading the 6th book. I was like, okay, I'm going to intentionally try to find every clue in here that these 2 old people that keep popping up are who Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson say they are. And I finished the book and I didn't find the links at all. I'm like, yeah. Does that mean that their adaptation version that finishes up the storyline that got cliffhangered in the quote unquote book 7, which is 2 books, I enjoyed them. I think that the original Frank Herbert books have a little bit more defined purpose, other than, hey, let's write a cool book. I think Frank Herbert's after a little bit something deeper than just let's write a cool book. I think he's after I think he's after something, a deeper idea from it. It's just like, okay, well, how can we make society more sustainable? How can we make people give up charismatic leaders? How can we make people give up tyranny? Bigger questions is what Frank Herbert's books are about. It's all entertaining. If you want to go read a whole bunch, if you want to read 20 Herbert Anderson books, please enjoy them. I haven't read all of them, but I've enjoyed several of them. So, I have them sitting on my shelf right next to the Frank Herbert books. So obviously I liked something about them.
Okay. Well, this wasn't a value proposition on the books themselves, more with how they fit with a larger canonical universe, because sometimes people play in sandboxes and it's a very thin veneer of whatever franchise they're writing in, and really they're just telling their own story. It's a danger when you play in other people's worlds.
Yeah, it is.
So that's more what I was asking. I probably should have been more clear.
Well, the reason I phrased it the way I did is because a lot of the book community that I've run into is very passionate about where they line up.
Right.
And if you go outside of where they line up and there's multiple boxes on where they line up, then they start saying, nope, you're the bad guy, which
I've noticed.
I don't fall for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
you like what you like,
big.
and I won't yuck your yum, and don't do it to me, and we can make jokes.
Right.
So
with the Brian Herbert ones, though, it's his son who has his stuff, or so he says.
And there's no reason to doubt that. I mean, I don't know that anyone's saying that he didn't have his dad's notes. If it took him that long to read it, I imagine he has a decent amount of notes written.
Yeah.
So Bill, given that you've read the book, for one, you've watched the first movie, and you and I go back on our love of all things military, How do you think the military aspects of this Dune novel stack up?
I was not impressed in the least with the military aspects, but it's a different approach. I like the combat aspects, and they kind of make sense, but they're also very World War One, World War Two ish. But what I find interesting is they go back to knives and shields. And one thing that I saw with the new movie that I didn't see with the new movie, but I saw with the old, was that Paul was developing a voice weapon, whereas he didn't really have that in book 2 or in the current movie that came out. So there's a lot of different aspects, but in the new movie that came out, they've got they're all basically sword and shield. They've got the shield that they tap their wrist and then are covered and protected from bullets. So they go, knife fight. That's interesting, but I could just see there's no spears, there's no other weapons or anything like that. So it's kind of very basic. They all attack each other in big lines. And it's not shield wall tactics. It's not medieval tactics. It's just knives and, short swords. So the military aspect is very questionable. And interesting, though. They do have guns, but they're not what we use.
That's my favorite word. That's my favorite word.
Well, in the Villeneuve Dune, it seems like you can overload a shield and just hit it hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that make explosives somewhat useful. And in the 84 Dune, they didn't even bother. You see Captain Picard running into battle with a machine gun in one hand and a pug in the other.
Yeah. Well, I like the shields. Go ahead.
I think in the novel, it's made very clear that explosives are rare to non-existence because the Baron busting out old school artillery is a big surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that Herbert had a military past as a combat veteran, he obviously knows what a gun is and has seen them used in a strategic manner. Why do you think he chose to write it that way?
Because it's skill level. And I think I know why he got rid of the guns and he made them irrelevant, is because then it puts the skill level on the trooper, on the soldier, on the fighter. They have to train in swords. They have to train in knives, like the samurai. You had the samurai. They were very good with swords, but against the gun, they were worthless. You could give guns to untrained troops. But then this way, with knives and shields, you had the Sardaukar, who are really very effective fighters, very well trained, and they're not easily defeated by a bunch of clowns with guns. So I think it was a very direct attempt to take guns out of the picture and make it all about the individual skill level of the fighters.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, guns make feudalism, if not obsolete, a lot harder because as he was saying, you got to train your whole life. You go to the sword. A peasant with a month's worth of training can ventilate a night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes feudalism easier.
And they did have guns, but they didn't work like what we're used to. They would fire a dart and then the dart would hit the shield and then start going slow to get through the shield. So it wasn't like they weren't there, but then it still put the skills back on the warrior. So you have a warrior class now.
And God help you in Dune if you have a laser gun and you shoot somebody with a shield. Because that's what we call a nuclear explosion.
Oh. Okay. That makes sense. I can buy that. I wonder, anyone who's like a lot of the World War I and II vets, when they wrote, it was almost like they were excising their demons. So I wonder if that was some of it. Because if he was with the Seabees in World War II, chances are he was on the Pacific campaign, and that was a lot more up close and personal just because of the terrain. And if that colors it too,
maybe it could have been that he never saw combat too. So he wanted to stay away from anything he would obviously not show experience in. So that's one possibility.
I just assumed because if he was a CB who got a medical discharge for a head injury, I just kind of assumed it was combat related. But that is possible that injury could have just been a construction accident.
Well,
So-
it could have been artillery.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Depending on, so he might not have never been anywhere near the front lines. Just an artillery barrage, and it happens.
Right. Further the military point, as far as the strategy of an overall battle, the biggest battle in the first book. This is the biggest battle probably in the entire series. It happens between the next to last and last chapters. It's not even on the page. We're going to drive the worms into battle and kill people. And we drove the worms into battle and killed a lot of people. That's pretty much what happens.
Yeah, and I could see that as, possibly he doesn't want to face that. But then another possibility is, as a private, he doesn't understand those big picture aspects. So he's not going to write about it.
Sure.
So that's fair. I realized that when I started writing myself, and you're writing larger military units, and you're like, okay, so that's what your platoon sergeant was doing when you thought he was being lazy and drinking coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely have learned that the echelons above you actually had jobs of merit as well, and that definitely is something. If you don't know, unless you have someone you can ask, it's one of those things where it sometimes can seem mysterious. I get that. So when you talk about spice in this movie, because that's one of the themes, is it's used to fold space and time, do you think that works for you as a way of space travel, or did you think it was a little too gimmicky?
Well, it's framed, especially in the original book and in the newer movies, it's framed as vital to space travel. The reason why, it's not said. The closest thing to an actual reason given in the books was invented by David Lynch. The whole folding space. Because Frank Garber didn't write down a reason. He's just like, yeah, this is important for space travel. And everybody bickers over it so much that the mechanics of it don't really get spelled out.
My understanding is that because high-level computers are illegal, you have to have the spice to give people the processing power to navigate in interstellar space. Yep. So you could have starships without spice. You just need computers that don't exist anymore.
Right.
And
that
from what I've seen in the books and the movie, is it alters the brain chemistry. So the Bene Gesserit use it, the navigators use it, and then eventually Paul uses it to see the future. So it alters the brain chemistry, and I think that's what allows them to, replace computers. So the navigators, they use it to fold space and time so that they can move the spaceships. That's what's so critical about the spice, is they use the spice for that. And then the Bene Gesserit, they use it as well for more, mystical things. So I think, I don't remember how much depth he went to in the books, but just remembering the movies, it was it was critical to changing the mind chemistry.
Yeah.
And I thought that worked.
The mind chemistry that changes for the Bene Gesserit purposes is so that Reverend Mothers can see the memories of previous generations. Paul having that same ability lets him actually see both parents' lineages and memories of previous generations. And then he gets to combine that with the part they leave out on a lot of stuff, that Paul is also a mentat, and he can use that information and experience combined with the computer level of predictability and actually foretell, this is where the bad guys are going to be. I'll blow them up before they get there.
And the Mentats they're another group that uses this spice as well.
So would you
say processing, as I recall,
that Paul Atreides was almost like a messiah character?
Like he was.
Yeah, he was.
Go ahead.
Well, he is deliberately that to also serve as a warning and a deconstruction of that as well.
Yeah, the second movie, they get real into the danger of the Messiah.
Yeah.
that the book really didn't. Like someone said, the book depicts Paul as Jesus. Had to write the second book to make him Hitler.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
the way I saw that, and I haven't seen the second movie for the new version yet, but the way I see it is Paul combines all of those. He takes the Mentat, he takes the Bene Gesserit, and then he takes the Navigator, and all their different abilities he combines in himself.
Yes.
And that's what makes him unique.
Yep. Completely on point.
Okay. So we've kind of gone far and wide. There's definitely room to come back for a lot more on this franchise. I definitely think we're going to have to do a review of one of the movies or maybe the miniseries at some point in the future, just because I want to see what all the fuss was about. Was there anything that we didn't mention as far as a broad overview goes that you think we should discuss before we wrap up?
Don't become part of somebody else's breeding program.
Oh, go on.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that keeps popping up throughout the series is, Paul is a product of Bene Gesserit breeding program, except no, he didn't go according to plan. And then later on, you get in book 4, you get the God Emperor's breeding program. That basically is, I'm trying to make it where nobody can have me again, except I'm actually trying to create somebody else too. And then you have the new Bene Gesserit breeding program that comes after that, which is, let's make sure we never have a God Emperor again, because that's just too damn powerful.
Okay.
Yeah, in this world though, eugenics seems to work.
Well, some of it's eugenics and some of it is the schools of training.
I mean,
managing evolution.
Yeah, I mean, Paul is
very much
the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's eugenics, but the Bene Gesserit are not necessary. Their abilities aren't necessarily eugenics, though they fall closer to that. Mentats are not eugenics at all. Navigators, it's a little bit 50-50.
Well, with Mentats and Navigators, seem they do a lot of drugs.
Yeah,
they all do a lot of drugs.
Yeah, but
so what you're telling me, sobriety killed space travel?
What's that?
So sobriety killed space travel. Got it.
Absolutely killed space travel. Yes.
Do they cover any potential negative side effects of the spice?
Well, my understanding is super addictive.
It is absolutely
blue
addictive.
eyes.
If you start taking the spice and you stop taking it, you're dead.
And with the Navigators, don't they turn into fish creatures?
They are mutated. It's kind of weird how they describe it. That's a book 2 problem.
It's like that episode of Voyager where they turn into newts.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, there are a lot of downsides to it it becomes such a vital portion of how they run their entire society that it becomes a question of, okay, nobody has spice. How do we do spice? Because we still have to do it.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Bill?
When you start to read the book, it's very heavy duty, and the fact it talks about government, it talks about eugenics, evolution, climate change because of what they do to Arrakis. He just incorporates so many different aspects of the world into the series that I've seen. It's very fascinating, and you could probably pick it apart for a very long time. Just all these different aspects. The way he takes a good guy, Paul Atreides, and he turns him into basically a Hitler in the later series. And then there's the religious aspects. There's so many things within the series to look at too.
So when you mentioned weighty, so you've read Starship Troopers, does it come to that level of philosophizing in the text, or is it more nuanced or more?
No, it's more intense than that, I think.
More.
It covers so many different levels. So Starship Troopers is very, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but compared to Dune, it is. Dune
Okay.
just hits it at several different levels.
All right, Matt, or excuse me, Matthew, final thoughts?
Can you repeat the question, please?
No, I was just asking if you had any closing thoughts on Dune as an IP that you think,
Well, there's so much more to discuss. I mean, it's very deep. We haven't really touched on the movies or miniseries very much at all. We could do a lot more than just this.
And I think we're definitely going to have to revisit it. If nothing else, Nick's a huge fan, so he wants us to do it when he's not at work. So we try to humor him that way. So we'll definitely invite you guys back for that, since you guys are also super fans. All right, final thoughts on this, shallow pool deep dive on the larger IP, Lynn?
The appendix in book 1 is your friend. Don't be afraid to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a lot of dictionary terms and such, but when they start talking about how Fremen are really badass warriors, there's a little short story in there that explains, here's how.
Wait, he added a short story into the novel, into the
yes. There's a short story in the backup material in the back of the original book that is the planetologist's father first seeing Harkonnen. First seeing a Fremen fight a group of Harkonnens.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a 10-page story, something like that.
That's cool. It's different than how they do publishing these days, and
very.
It's interesting. Do you know how it was received when the novel first came out? I mean, obviously, not all the classics were instantly well loved. Sometimes it took some building up to it. Was this one that was popular from its inception?
First book to ever receive both the Hugo and Nebula Award.
Wow. Okay, that's big. Mm-hmm. All right. So because we got so into I know I didn't say as much, but I was listening because I'm interested, and now I definitely want to go check out the books. But since we didn't do a sponsor, Lynn, what is the favorite book you've written of yours? And we're going to link all three. You're each going to give me one, and I'm going to link that as a sponsor today.
Oh, the favorite book that I've written of mine.
Yes.
Okay, well, that I have out currently as of this recording, it's going to be Scars of Shadow, which I previously discussed on here. But in a couple of months, I've actually got a book coming that's very Dune inspired. It's called Loyalty of Severus.
Okay, and I'll link to that because this is gonna, we record about a month and a half before they air, so we have a buffer. Do you know when it's coming out? Because
I'm aiming for late spring, early summer. So you probably will have this out before then, but it will be coming by then. But if I have you a date, I'll have it listed.
Outstanding. All right, what's the favorite of all of the books you've written, Matt? What's your favorite?
Okay, well, my favorite probably my steampunk war novel, Battle for the Wastelands, but the most relevant one right now is the Thing in the Woods, because I've just made Thing in the Woods and a sequel, The Atlanta Incursion, wide release, like Kobo, Apple Books, and I even sold a copy in Tolino, the German ebook service. And by late 2024, I want to have the third book out, The Walking Worm. So it's probably better to talk about that series.
We'll definitely have to have you back to talk about that. All right. What about you, Bill? What's your favorite of all the books you've written?
Right now, it's actually book 10 of my Last Marine series, the last one to come out, because there's just a lot of different things that happens in that one. And the name of the book is Mother Earth. There's just a lot that happens. There's a marriage. There's a lot of big fights, and it's just a lot of interesting things. And if you know who Stathis is, he plays a lot in that book, and he's a lot of fun.
This will air after the interview we did where we talked about Last Marines, but because I'm a completionist and I can't start a series at book 10, we will link to the series page for the Last Marines, and that way if you want to just read book 10, you're more than welcome, but I suggest you read 1 through 9 first, just because propriety and all that.
Yeah, you got to read the previous books. It won't make sense.
All right, Lynn, where can they find you on the wild interwebs?
Len-Berry.com. And I have many other places on top of that. I've got Twitter/X. I've got Blue Sky. I've got Instagram. I've got TikTok. You can find me online, Len Berry.
So if Twitter, you tweeted, and now Twitter became X, do we now Twix instead of tweet?
Elon Musk says we X, but I think most people I know just still call it Twitter and tweet.
Yeah, but X sounds, I don't know, it just doesn't have that ring to it.
Right,
if
exactly.
we Twix, do we left Twix or do we right Twix?
Ooh, see, this is the philosophical questions
Very
we bring
good
you on
question.
for.
Or is it peanut butter Twix or caramel Twix?
Wait,
Or
peanut butter
OG
Twix?
Twix? It's just the
No,
OG.
it's always caramel. What kind of heathen does it as peanut butter? That's what Reese's are for.
Well, I'm just saying, it's an option.
Okay. Well, deep breaths. We said we wouldn't
Reese's-
yuck other people's yums, so you do you people.
Reese's actually has one that they just dropped that has caramel in it.
See, now you're just breaking the space-time continuum with this kind of crossover nonsense.
No. Breaking the space-time continuum is the fact that Reese's also has a peanut butter cup that has potato chips in it.
It's true, they do.
Is this like an April Fool's joke and it's just a few days late?
No.
They also have one with Cocoa Puffs in it, and they have one with pretzels in it.
Yep.
Reese's is getting wild.
Maybe they're trying to bring on the apocalypse and they just want the asteroid to hit us now.
No,
They need
that's
more
what
people with
April 8th
diabetes.
is for.
Yeah, I think it's the diabetes.
All right, Matt, where can they find you on the wild interwebs?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have Twitter anymore. I have a Substack, The World According to Quinn, and an Amazon page. Search Amazon for Matthew W. Quinn.
All right, and we will link to all of that on the show notes, dear listener. Never fear. All right, and now that we got that out of the way, this is the part where we remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. It really is pivotal when you're talking about indie presses, small presses, and new debut authors. Those reviews go a long way in tweaking the algorithm. So seriously, help an author you love out and leave a review. It really does mean a lot to the publishing industry. With that said, you can find us on our link tree at linktr.ee, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the Twitters, the TikToks. I have not forgotten our email, blastersbladepodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades podcast @gmail.com. Professional purposes only, people. We have a Facebook group and Facebook page. And more importantly, we have Madam Stabby Stab on Instagram, Twitter, and email. For all the unprofessional shenanigans, she's your lady. We have our website at anchor.fm/blasters-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. We're for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. Every penny helps keep the show going, and we greatly appreciate it. You can support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink some of that coffee brand coffee until their eyes turn brown and their hair flows with Java. That would be an interesting thing to see. That would be her new
If my eyes turn brown, I am fighting you, JR. I am fighting you.
No, you should be fighting the coffee brand
fighting you.
coffee people.
Nope. You just put that curse on me. And I love coffee, and I love coffee brand coffee, and I have beautiful eyes. And you're trying to curse me with brown eyes just because you have brown eyes. It's rude. You put that bad juju on me.
Maybe I'm a brown eye supremacist. Well, that has way many. You know what? We're just going to move on because so many jokes in that. I don't know. Just we'll move on. Wow. All right. So on a little bit of business on the way out the door, our website, the anchor.fm, Anchor FM merged with Spotify at some point in the near past. At some point in time, they're going to merge those two and require our Anchor FM to blend into. It'll happen seamlessly on our end. So that link at some point in the future will change. So if you can't find us on Anchor FM, just check the show notes. We'll update it as the changes happen with current episodes. and then you can backwards to whatever episode you want to watch over there or listen, I guess. If you're already got it automatically on your phone podcasting apps, it should happen automatically, is what they're telling us. But if you have any trouble finding us, just reach out and we'll make that happen for you. Unfortunately, we can't control mega corporations and their buyouts, so we just got to do what we got to do to survive in this crazy, crazy world. With that,
until the 8th.
Well, this will be airing after the 8th. So if you're listening to this, the apocalypse didn't come with the sun blackout little situation we got going on in April. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you, Lynn, Matthew, Bill, for coming on. This was a lot of fun. We're definitely going to have to do more episodes, and I'm definitely going to have to check out this book now. You've sold me, so thank you, guys. And with that,
happy to be the drug pusher on that.
Yeah, first hit's always free, isn't it?